dice? ¿Vamos bien?
No hay una... Oye, marico, hay algo, está pasando. Verga, marico. Marica, también.
We live in a twilight world. This should be a quick recording, but I said that about the last one and it ended up being about 40 minutes. So let's see. I try and make them as quick as possible, but sometimes, you know, you go off on a rant and they're way longer than they should be. I know most people have got brain rot and they don't watch anything over 10 minutes. So yeah, man, I will try and make it as quick as possible. So I feel that one of the things I've done good is push the notion forward that things like the air defense system, like the Iron Dome in Israel, is a giant fireworks display used to scare the shit out of the population below, used to make whatever war they're pushing appear real. Remember, an illusion is a deceptive perception of reality. Yeah? You can put illusion warfare into 3 categories. Inception, putting the idea into someone's head. Immersive, where you have to provide physical evidence that backs up the original inception. And then, of course, you have information, where people, mass formation psychosis, go along with the fiction, thus bringing it in to reality, thus manifesting it into reality, thus conjuring it into our existence. So this would be under the middle part, the immersive side of it, right? So when it comes to like TV, internet, radio, social media, you can keep pumping out CGI images all day long, stage footage, but at some point you have to provide physical evidence for the general population to believe whatever terror or war or battle or conflict is real. And this fireworks display, such as the Iron Dome in Israel, does an amazing job of doing that. Yeah. So I've got 2 images here. This is an illustration from a book that was made in 1897. So what's that? 129 years ago. And here is an image from the news in 2023. Yeah. This is over Tel Aviv after the October 7th attacks. And it's pretty much identical, isn't it? So just quickly, that image, that illustration is from this book here. Magic, Stage, Illusion and Scientific Diversions, including Trick Photography by Albert Hopkins. And you can see here, made in 1897. Or published in 1897, whatever. over the years, you know, you would have seen me using these illustrations like over on Twitter, back when I was on Twitter a few years ago, and maybe on Instagram, I don't know. But yeah, man, this is the source, the book itself. Original copies are very expensive. We're talking 200, 300, 500, £1,000. But there are reprinted copies that you can get on Amazon for about 30 to 50 quid. So, you know, maybe you want to pick it up, maybe you don't. But yeah, man, I reference this quite a lot. But back to these two images, yeah. You know, I got them side by side here, this illustration from a book regarding stage magic and a picture from the news in 2023. You're practically looking at the same thing, right? So this image here, this drawing, this illustration would have been of the actual stage production that took place or was happening in the 1800s. I believe this is meant to be when Napoleon burnt Moscow to the ground, or a reenactment of that using fireworks and a stage and set dressings and props and facades and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, this stuff's been going on for 200 years, man. Theatricality as a spectacle, and people love it, right? So we'll get into that in a sec and how it draws parallels to world stage theatre, illusions and deceptions and magic with a C, but also magic with a K. But let's have a look at the book. We'll try and read it out loud and see what it says. We'll try and get through it as quick as possible. Okay, so bear with me, yeah, because the writing is quite faint. And it's kind of written in old-timey talk as well, so bear with me. I'm going to be reading this like a spaz. But, yeah, I'll have a sip of my coffee, hang on. So, Chapter 8, Fireworks with Dramatic Accessories. The love of show and spectacular is inherent in human nature. Games and entertainments on a colossal scale have always appealed to the popular taste. An important factor in such spectacles is the display of fireworks, in the love for which the Americans can sympathize with the Orientals. As far back as 1879, Mr. James Payn of London gave spectacular productions at Manhattan Beach, one of New York's most popular resorts, and since that time their popularity has been increased, so that now entertainments of this class are given in comparatively small cities. It is perhaps more proper to speak of these entertainments as fireworks with dramatic accessories than to call them dramas with fireworks. For the reason d'etre of the entire performance depends not upon the loosely hung together plot, but the gigantic display of fireworks, which is accompanied by enough of realistic stage settings and dramatic performance to give a good excuse for the performance. Strange as it may seem, these mammoth plays, as regards the scenery, are as interchangeable as those in any theatre. The grounds in which the scenery is installed being of the same general dimensions in all cases. This, of course, greatly simplifies a change of performance. So the point they're trying to make there is that the star of the show here is the fireworks, and the actors and performers are only sort of assisting the fireworks, yeah? As opposed to having fireworks assist actors and a performance. Does that make sense? The fireworks are the main star in this show, yeah? Everything else is just assisting the fireworks. The fireworks are telling the story, yeah? The set dressings are telling the story. Now, this is quite different from regular theatre, isn't it? Where it's all based upon the actor. So in this concept here, fireworks with accessories The sequence of fireworks, the set dressings being moved around, they are telling the story. The actors are merely just helping it along. The actors are the background characters. And that is quite impressive, I think. Like, when you think about it, because this obviously is going to relate to what I'm going to talk about after I've read this in regards to like the Iron Dome and over in Ukraine with the air defense systems and so on. So anyway, let's get back to reading it. The company, which has been prominently identified with these spectacles, sometimes has as many as 7 in use at one time. They move about from place to place, so in the course of a season, 30 or 40 cities are visited. The stay varying from a week to a whole season. So they're talking about the fact that these productions, these firework productions with set dressings, they move around like a traveling circus, yeah? Once again, this obviously relates to what I talk about in regards to the Hidden Hand and the Ghost Legion moving around all across the world, creating these false flag events, these fireworks displays, these manufactured scenarios. Back to reading. The performance is held in the open air at either some popular resort or some place where the grounds are readily accessible. An amphitheater is provided for the spectators in a rectangle enclosure which may seat as many as 10,000 persons. The seats slope away until the water is reached. Here will be found an artificial lake, usually 318 feet long and 150 feet wide, and the width of the entire stage being 350 feet. Behind the pond is a stage mounted with set scenes. Of course, owing to the distance and darkness, the refinement of acting would entirely be wasted. The management, therefore, depends almost entirely on the spectacular. The cast including companies of clever gymnasts and acrobats. So once again, that he's emphasizing here that the fireworks are telling the story. Yeah, the set dressings being moved around are telling the stories. And the fact that the audience sits so far away, for obviously health and safety reasons, usually have a body of water between the audience and the fireworks display. It would be pointless to have actors anyway, because actors would be so small and they'd be far away and they'd be pointless. Once again, you know, when you're watching a so-called war on TV, you're obviously seeing the whole cityscape and lights flashing and so on. The performance is so arranged as to lead up to some stirring catastrophe. The climax is generally awful cataclysm or some blood-curdling war scene or a conflagration. Conflagration, that's an old-fashioned word that just means like lots of fire, like a fiery explosion. We select for the purpose of illustration one of the most successful of these spectacles, the burning of Moscow at the time of the French invasion. The scene is a true representation of the docks and the quays of the ancient Russian capital. At each side appear arched stone bridges, and the whole is surrounded by strong fortifications. Sentinels walk back and forth upon the wall of the Kremlin. The action of the drama is but brief, and after a gymnastic exhibition of marching and counter-marching by the actors, the band plays the solemn strains of the Russian national hymn, while priests of the Greek church render classical music of a somber character, which has striking effect. The army of Napoleon now approaches, shells begin to fly over the doomed city, and as the bare skins of the French grenadiers appear at the entrance at either side, the terrorized Russians rapidly disappear. The prisoners in the jails are liberated and with torches prepare to light the fires. The conflagration now begins. So that means the fire now begins. And the pyrotechnics display becomes splendid. The roar of the flames is heard, and amid explosions, the buildings seem to be licked up by the flames and collapse, leaving charred remains. So here's an illustration there. You've got the stagehands here. You know, they would obviously collapse the building at the right time to make it look like it's being burnt to the ground, yeah? Amazing stuff, right? This is exactly what I'm talking about when I talk about theatricality and deception on world stage theatre, right? Yeah, the Battle of Kiev, the bombing of Baghdad, yeah? The siege of Dubrovnik, yeah? You're just watching a load of fireworks going off from some CCTV camera or a strategically placed film crew, and basically the Hidden Hand and the Ghost Legion, yeah, are running around setting off fireworks, yeah, setting off pyrotechnics, yeah, which are no different really than actual missiles, but instead of using high explosives, you use low explosives, yeah, and you add things like magnesium, aluminium powder, stuff that makes a really bright bang and is very smoky, but has little actual damage effect, yeah. Modern explosive ordnance and munitions are not actually very smoky. So that's always a sign. When you see bombs going off that are very smoky, that's a sign they are more of a theatrical round as opposed to an actual round there to do damage. Anyway, let's read on. Where were we? The roar of the flames is heard, and amid explosions, the buildings seem to be lit up by the fire and collapse, leaving charred remains. Wow. I had to read that twice. The air is full of burning serpents, and the water is alive with incandescent figures. The grand finale is an aerial burst of rockets as shown in our engraving. Having seen one of these spectacles, the reader will ask how the remarkable effects are obtained. Our illustration shows the scenery as viewed from the rear of the stage. The scenery is hinged and braced, some parts turning on pivots, and all arranged so as to be quickly thrown down into such semblance of ruin as shells best carry out the idea the piece is intended to represent. It is, however, only the work of a few hours to rehabilitate the entire scenery for use the next night. So in regards to, like, you know, going back to how this draws parallels to world stage theatre and when they create the illusion of war, in the book here, they're talking about having collapsible scenery. When it comes to world stage theatre, yeah, the Battle of Kiev, the bombing of Baghdad, the siege of Dubrovnik, they've already designated empty buildings that they're going to blow up. Yeah? So on the stage here, what he's talking about in this book, set dressings collapse and then they can be rehabilitated. What I talk about on world stage theatre, they designate buildings, like the Twin Towers, for example, that are going to be demolished. Yeah, they've already been marked. They've already been evacuated. They're empty buildings. They're going to get demolished. And unlike this situation where they just, like he says, rehabilitate it and use it again the next night, on the world stage theatre, no, they want the rubble on the floor so that people then go stand next to it and take pictures and that. Yeah, because you know, with this stage production that you're watching a performance, with world stage theatre, you've got to create the illusion it's real, so it's better to leave, physical evidence on the floor, such as the rubble of a smashed up building, right? Right, let's carry on reading. In the performance which we have described, some of the best effects of art of pyrotechnics are shown in the brilliance and sustaining power of the various lights and colours given out by the rockets. wheels, stars, Roman candles, gold and silver rain, etc. Of course, vast quantities of coloured fire are also required to light the scene. Our last engraving shows how some of the firework effects are obtained. The grand aerial banquet of rockets consists of a battery of rockets which are discharged simultaneously from the stand as shown in the engraving. Our other engravings show water serpents, water dolphins, and floating fire fountains. As they float around in the waters, they produce fine effects. So there's obviously one of the batteries they would use to fire out, like you said, a barrage of rockets. Yeah, there's obviously a Roman candle planted in the ground there. A fire fountain, as they call it. And here's what he was talking about, the scenery from the other side. Yeah, now you're a stagehand standing the other side of the scenery. Obviously over here will be the water and the audience. Interestingly, we have a double cross there, but we're not going to go in a double cross today. Yep, this picture we've already covered, stagehands dropping the scenery. And of course, the main one here. Yeah, impressive stuff, isn't it, really? So yeah, as he, that last little paragraph there, he's talking about the different types of fireworks, different types of colour, different variations of how it would explode, from candles to stars to rockets. Yeah, I will cover this a bit later on in this video, but yeah, man, you just get regular artillery shells, regular missiles, regular rockets. What's changed is the chemical inside, yeah? You go from using high explosives to using low explosives like good old-fashioned gunpowder, and you add a bit of magnesium in there. Yeah, so this makes a very big flash, very smoky, but impact-wise, like explosive-wise, like damage-wise, it's actually, low explosive. But, this book, what I've just read there is, pretty much describes how they do it on the world stage, isn't it? I'm sure you can all understand where I'm going with this and what I'm getting at, yeah? So now let's look at some actual examples of what I'm talking about, yeah? So this is an iconic picture from Desert Storm, the Gulf War, or somewhere in between. I can't really remember off the top of my head. But essentially, I think it was Saddam Hussein and the Iraqi forces, as they left Kuwait, they set fire to the oil fields, right? So that no one could use them, right? As a way to disrupt their rival, Kuwait. Yeah? And if you remember, if you've ever seen any documentaries or even films like Jarhead, yeah, that are about Desert Storm, the Gulf War, you'll know that this is what you'll always see, yeah? Tanks and troops and helicopters flying past this here scene. Which, in my opinion, is exactly what we're talking about in regards to a spectacular bit of scenery, right? That when people at home are watching this all across the world, they're going to be, oh my God, look how horrific that is. Also, this obviously makes it very real for the soldiers on the ground, right? So if someone like me comes along and says, the Gulf War, it was an engineered event, the hidden hand that controls Iraq, arranged with a hidden hand that controls Kuwait for them to have a little bit of a back and forth. And that basically they made the decision to send in people to set alight the oil fields purely for a visual spectacle. Didn't really do anything economically. It was more as like the main event of this war. They would say to me, fuck you, man. I was in the Gulf War. I remember sweating my balls off in this tank. I remember breathing in this toxic fumes, man. Don't tell me it wasn't real. You know what I'm saying? Like, for them, it's a very real experience. But, when we think about it, yeah, this is these are being used as like a Roman candle, or as our book illustrates or says, a fire fountain, yeah? Which creates this whole scene. At the end of the day, whether it was members of the League of Shadows that went running in and set alight to oil fields, maybe it was an inside job by the Kuwaitis. Maybe there was a bunch of British commandos running around in the shadows like they always are. Or maybe, you know, it was just Iraqis following orders. It doesn't really matter, yeah? That's irrelevant. The point is that someone thought this up in their mind and done it deliberately to make this iconic scene. And this, as like it says in the book, this here is the star of the show, yeah? The performance of the fireworks is the star of the show. These guys down here, these actors, they're merely assisting, yeah, the main performance, yeah? These are background characters that are assisting this. This is the main event, yeah? This is the thing that makes people think, wow, that's both scary and impressive. So not that long ago, what, January 2026? Yeah, I'm recording this in February 2026. Yeah, so in January we had the Venezuela illusion operation, which was clear as day, made for TV, theatricality and deception, illusion warfare, man. These are fireworks with the helicopters flying by and all these explosions going off in the distance. It's pure theatre made for TV. And anyone who believes this as real, well, you'll believe anything, yeah? So if you remember the Venezuelan situation, yeah, like for a good, 2 months, maybe you could say 3 months if you consider like the hype and the talk, a bunch of Navy vessels, yeah, a strike carrier group as they call it, parked up outside Venezuela in the Caribbean Sea, and everyone made fools of themselves and predicted that a land force was going to happen and that they were going to put boots on the ground in Venezuela and especially around Caracas, the capital. Of course, that didn't happen. What happened was an illusion operation, just like the Battle of Kiev, yeah? Theatricality and deception. They obviously spent some time, the hidden hand, over in Caracas paying people off, yeah? What we spoke about in the last video, the black budget, the black art. You paid people off, you made sure they were going to turn off the missile defense systems at the right time. And of course, the Ghost Legion or paid members of the Venezuelan military, or even just Operation Gladio style troops that exist in Venezuela, would have gone around setting up all of the pyrotechnics, yeah, ready for this theatrical stunt of where the helicopters fly over Caracas and the explosions are going off in the background, yeah? One of the most ridiculous things that's ever happened, but people believe it, yeah? Let's quickly look at the video. Let's turn the sound off. You know, this is insane. I mean, anyone who's buying this as believable, you know, more fool you, innit? If ever there was a validating event that proves Lez LuTHOR and his concept of illusion warfare is accurate, this would be it, yeah? Helicopters with fireworks going off in the background. Now, what's interesting, I would say, is there's always people in the right position at the right time, filming in the right direction on their smartphone. In my opinion, and I'm pretty certain on this, those people holding the smartphone, filming what you just saw there, stuff like this, a firework coming from the sky, landing right next to him. These are members of the Ghost Legion, yeah, aka the League of Shadows, yeah, Operation Gladio Foot Soldiers, whatever you want to call them, they have been purposely put there inside that hotel room to film that event, so then they can put it on social media, flood social media, and make it look like it's come from regular people, as opposed to the good old days when it was CNN that would be the ones, running for cover and ducking down as bombs are flying overhead. Yeah, people don't buy that anymore. But unfortunately, people do believe that when it comes from a smartphone via social media, they think that it's more real. Yeah. Of course, they want as much regular people to film this stuff as possible, but for that crucial moment, the missile or the firework comes down, yeah, you need someone in the right place at the right time who's going to be there to capture it. Preferably backup people as well that are going to be around to film it. Just on the off chance, guy number one and guy number two, yeah, operative number one, operative number two, suddenly for whatever reason their camera breaks, yeah. You've always got to have a backup, yeah. These are what we call deception operatives or deception officers, yeah. Professionals in the art of the jinn, yeah, the art of deception, the art of concealment, the art of being hidden, yeah. They use the term latio, which is Latin for meaning to be hidden. But, you've seen all these videos. They've been going around for a long, long time. I'll turn the sound on this. You can clearly see these are fireworks. So yeah, it wouldn't be hard in that period. I mean, it might have started 6 months ago. It wouldn't be hard for the deception operatives, the Ghost Legion, yeah, the League of Shadows to go in, mark out the territory, yeah, work out the lay of the land, which buildings are empty, where's a safe spot to have a battery of fireworks where no one's going to get hurt, like an empty car park or a cement factory or a power station, And of course they plan it no different than on, fireworks night, when a fireworks planner goes and sets up his rig and, and how he's going to execute his fireworks display. Yeah, it's all the same thing. So, a couple of days ago, yeah, the 22nd of the 2nd, yeah, that famous date, the start of the Ukraine war, but this time the 22nd of the 2nd, 2026, there was some unrest over in Mexico, yeah? Obviously, an illusion operation, you can tell, yeah? Well, those of us that are initiated can tell, yeah? The uninitiated are obviously falling for it. But anyway, the storyline is supposedly the head of the cartel was killed, and then all of the cartel members then took revenge by burning down places in Mexico. How was this illusion created? Well, the League of Shadows, the Ghost Legion, put a bus in the middle of the street and they just burn it, yeah? Just burn a bus in the middle of the street. That's all you got to do. Yeah? Inferno, a blaze in the middle of the street. What type of firework would this be? Well, this would be like a fire log, I guess. You just have in the middle of the stage, just burning away, creating lots of smoke. Yeah, and then of course, the background actors, yeah, the gymnasts, march up and down the stage. Yeah? In other words, the hidden hand calls up the head of the police and orders his men to theatrically do loops around the city. Yeah, I've been talking about this for a long time. This is how you create the illusion of, in this case, civil unrest. Get the Ghost Legion, or you simply pay some useful idiots to go and burn up some buses or petrol stations. You then make a phone call and you get the commissioner, of the police to order his troops, his foot soldiers, to do loops around the city theatrically like this, guns all hanging out, lights flashing. Also, you set up checkpoints and that, yeah? To read this again. Marching and counter-marching by the actors. The band plays the solemn strains of Russian national hymn, and the priests of the Greek church render classic music of a somber character, which has a striking effect. Yeah? The army of Napoleon now approaches. Shells begin to fly over the doomed city, and as the bearskins of the French grenadiers appear at the entrance either side, the terrorized Russians rapidly disappear. Now here's the main part, how this relates to Mexico, yeah? The prisoners in the jails are liberated. In other words, the cartel members are given the green light. And with torches prepare to light the fires. The conflagration, which means the inferno, now begins. And the pyrotechnic display becomes splendid. The roar of flames is heard. And amid explosions, the buildings seem to be lit up by the fires. I talk about this a lot, smoke and mirrors. This is my terminology, smoke and mirrors. They create the smoke. You film it on your Black Mirror. Yeah? They want members of the public to film this and now flood social media. You've got to remember, that book I'm referencing, that was back in the 1800s, yeah? Early 1900s. Those days, you had to go and sit in the audience. Now, the whole world is a stage. We're living in the Truman Show. They don't really need you to go and visit the performance. They bring the performance to you. Yeah? And then you film it. You post it to social media. You are unknowingly taking part in the propaganda campaign. Yeah? Sorry to say this, but you become a useful idiot that's upholding the fiction. You're upholding the narrative. You're being a part of the illusion. Have a sip of my coffee. Now, yet another example, the actual Iron Dome itself. Yeah, the most obvious one. This, of course, it seems like every other year we'll see the Iron Dome in action on TV. I believe that what you're seeing on TV is it's been exaggerated and sensationalized with CGI, computer graphic imagery. Yeah? So when you're watching it on TV, they've enhanced it, they've made it look way more spectacular than it actually is. But nevertheless, I do believe that the Iron Dome, which is a fireworks display system, does happen over the top of Tel Aviv to scare the shit out of the public. Yeah. Once again, they want you to film it, right? On your smartphone. They create the smoke, you film it on your Black Mirror, yeah? Smoke and mirrors. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory how the Iron Dome works. I'll read it anyway, yeah? This is from the BBC, the British Broadcasting Corporation. The Deceivers. How Israel's Iron Dome defense system works. Missile explodes near rocket, destroying it. Yeah, so that's important. The actual Iron Dome missiles explode near it. They don't collide with it. They just make a big explosion, which knocks out this missile. This enemy rocket that has been fired is what they call a Qassam rocket. Yeah. It's a very primitive style rocket. But anyway, so they've supposedly got a radar system, picks up these. The control system estimates impact point. Supposedly this works out where this is going. Because these primitive rockets, they work on a parabolic trajectory. Yeah. They've got no intelligence or technology in them that guides them. They're literally a point and shoot, very primitive missile. Yeah. And then, of course, the launcher fires missiles to intercept, yeah? So a radar, a control system that works out the trajectory, and then the actual rocket system itself, yeah? It says at the bottom here, Iron Dome system ignores incoming threats it determines will land in uninhabited areas. I'm pretty sure most of these rockets are aimed at uninhabited areas, in my opinion. I don't really know that for sure. I'd have to see it in action, live, to work out the angles and where they're being aimed at and so on. Here's another little image. I don't know where this one's from, but yeah, you get the idea, right? And here it refers to these missiles as short-range rockets, yeah, from Gaza. Supposedly from the Hamas insurgents or terrorists, whatever you want to call them. But here's an up-close look at these Qassam rockets. Yeah, very, like I said, very, very basic, very, very primitive, yeah? Just point and shoot. The angle which they are fired from, this little frame here, determines their parabolic trajectory. Yeah, there is no smart technology inside of these that is guiding them or making them land on target. Yeah, they are, you just shoot them in the general direction of your enemy. Maybe it will hit, maybe it won't. But these are super cheap. Yeah, and easy to make. I could teach you how to make these. Yeah, they probably cost per rocket about $600. Yeah, this is just a bit of PVC plastic tubing. You can cut out some fins out of plastic. You just need a cone. There's apparently a little bit of explosives in the head, which is triggered by like a little pin here when it lands. Rocket fuel, potassium and sugar. You boil it up and then mix it together and dry it out. You can use a car battery to ignite it. Easy to make. Yeah? And very cheap. Now, I don't know. Maybe these are being used, maybe they're being not. But anyway, they look exactly like a giant firework, right? Yeah? Because that's what it is. It's just a giant firework. Just like a bottle rocket, but way bigger. Of course, in the book was this image here. Here's the Israel missile launcher. Here's the fireworks battery, as they called it in the book. Yeah, you're looking at the same thing. The only thing I would sort of like throw in there, yeah, again, I can't prove this. I'm just purely speculating, like I always am. All I know is I know nothing. But I'm speculating that they're not actually using these very basic, primitive Qassam missiles, right? I think what they do, the hidden hand again, the Ghost Legion, the League of Shadows goes and sets up in Gaza and just uses a very similar style of rocket to what the actual Israelis are using. And they're synced together. Yeah? They have the exact same technology in them. They use the exact same radar. They're both synced to the same radar. So it makes it so that when they're both fired at the same time, they collide mid-air on target, never missing. But having said that, this way would work as well. I just think them setting up one of these, yeah, whether it's the IDF or the Ghost Legion, doesn't really matter. One of these would be more easier to manage and control as opposed to these rockets here, right? Yeah, you would just sync these together, yeah? You would get the radar and the communication to sync these, yeah? So in synchronicity, they fire and collide mid-air at the same time. Yeah, all you need to do is have it going for about 2 minutes. It will be very, very spectacular. Everyone will film it on their phones, and that's it. You could perhaps fire 100 missiles, but like I said, you then get the CGI bros to make it look like thousands and thousands of missiles have been shot, and it's been going on for hours instead of just minutes, right? Yeah, you exaggerate it using the internet, TV, and radio, and you get the CGI people to enhance it, yeah, and so on. But yeah, man, I don't know for sure. I definitely think you could use these. Perhaps maybe the so-called actor, the so-called terrorists, which are just actors, have inserted some sort of, there's not an actual warhead in there, there's some sort of beacon in there, yeah, or some sort of bit of material, so it makes it that these Iron Dome missiles can actually, you know, blow up next to it very easily, and there's no mishaps, yeah. But it's a simple case, yeah. Once again, the hidden hand, yeah, the agent who is in charge of running Hamas, the actors playing Hamas, also is the same person who is in control of the IDF. He rings them both up and says, right, at 9 p.m. on Tuesday night, go time. You're both going to fire at the same time, and that's it. 2-minute barrage from you guys. This is obviously going to do its job. This very expensive, highly technically advanced firework is going to do its job. 2 minutes, bang. CGI bros will do the rest to make it look 1,000 times worse or 1,000 times more spectacular than it actually was, yeah, on TV. Okay, another example would be over in Ukraine, the so-called war in Ukraine. Yeah. It's quite common knowledge now, it's very well known, it's not a conspiracy theory, that a lot of the missiles that Russia is using have no warhead. Yeah. The warhead, the explosive part, has been removed, and they put sand in there or concrete or whatever. Yeah. So there's no actual warhead. And, you know, like I'm saying, they're merely getting shot into the sky to be taken down mid-air, which creates a fireworks display. Of course, this is only a fireworks display to the initiated. To the average person, the uninitiated, they are, you know, believing it's all real, right? Theatricality and deception, they're buying into it. Pictures like this, though, this is obviously fake. Yeah. You know, someone has obviously dug a hole and then just plonked one in there. So this is now being used as a prop. Yeah, a set dressing to make certain parts of Ukraine look like it's been hit by missiles. Because at the end of the day, if this fell out of the sky, the body would crumple and fold. It wouldn't just land like that, like a wooden arrow. The same again here, yeah. This is, you know, a lot of staging of shit. All for photos for the average person at home, right? To make them think this is all real. I mean, this kind of, looking at this now, that looks like it's been CGI'd in there, right? But nevertheless, he's probably just come across this in the middle of a field, dug a little hole and poked it in there, right? If it is real, if it's not CGI. Yeah. Once again, them landing through a window, through a roof like that, maybe that's possible. But yet again, it hasn't exploded because there's no there's no warhead in this missile. It is basically a dummy, what they call a dummy missile or a decoy missile. Yeah. Now, we will be told that the Russians are doing this like strategically to exhaust all of the air defense systems given to Ukraine by NATO. But yet again, that's just the story that's being overlaid on top of the stage magic, yeah, on top of the illusion, right? Now, of course, if one of these landed on your fucking head, it would hurt a lot. You'd probably die. But mathematically speaking, the odds of this happening are very low. Like I said earlier in this video, they designate empty buildings, yeah, and then they call in the airstrikes on the empty buildings or empty fields and things like this. Car parks, places where no one actually lives, in case the air defense system doesn't work and knock it out in the air, making a fireworks display. But like I said, also, a lot of these are just props, yeah? Like, never forget, Ukraine, up until 1991, was part of the Soviet Union. So they've got shitloads of fucking, you know, warehouses full of old Soviet missiles that haven't got the warhead in, yeah? Yeah, like this example. I mean, yeah, again, this could be a CGI photo, but let's, for the sake of the argument, say it's not. Somewhere in Ukraine, there's just a whole graveyard full of old Soviet missiles that were never used and were due for the scrap heap. You know, the director of the movie, yeah, the director of props, the director of stage sets and scenery will just grab these, yeah, and place them all over Ukraine like so, yeah, creating the illusion that it's raining missiles in Ukraine. Now, once again, like I just spoke about with the Iron Dome, yeah, Russia might send 10 of these decoy missiles in the direction of Ukraine aimed at an empty field. But this will be exaggerated, yeah, and sensationalized. Ukraine will say that Russia sent 500 missiles and that Ukraine, you know, being as great as they are, they shot down 499 of them and only one got through. And the one that got through will be a prop that they've just hired a crane and just dropped it through the ceiling like this and then put the pictures all across social media, right? You see what I'm getting at? You shoot 10 decoy missiles, you let the CGI bros and the media experts make it look like 500 missiles were sent and 499 of them were shot down, yeah? The propaganda game, isn't it? Yeah? All warfare is based on deception, yeah? Quote from Sun Tzu. Regardless of whether you think Sun Tzu is a real person or not, that phrase and his work has been around for thousands of years, yeah? Yeah, deception, theatricality, smoke and mirrors, exaggeration, sensationalism, trapdoors, pulleys, strings, curtains, lights, shadows, yeah? All these tactics that are used to create the illusion of missiles coming at you or being shot down midair. So once again, this is, this here, like things like this would create, would create the illusion that there's been a shitload of missiles fired at a major city or location or whatever. Just another quick one, yeah. World War II, yeah, over London. Scenes like this supposedly happened, and here's what it says above. Tracers in use in 1944 showing anti-aircraft fire against V1 missiles. So yeah, man, the Nazis, the Germans were firing the V1 rockets over London. And then, of course, the anti-aircraft guns were shooting tracer rounds up into the sky, yeah? So it would have looked like this. And these are the searchlights down here. There used to be whole regiments dedicated to manning the searchlights. So they would have to put a spotlight upon the V1 rocket and then the gunners would have to shoot it down. Yeah, tracer rounds. Just going to read this quickly. Pyrotechnic devices attached to the rear of projectiles to enable their flight path to be seen. Used only with direct fire weapons, i.e. weapons which are in sight of their targets. So that in the event of missing the target, the observer can make corrections to bring the fire on the target. So, yeah, man, they are bullets that glow. Yeah, they glow so you can see where you're shooting. So once again, visually very spectacular, isn't it? So what we're looking at here, which supposedly happened over the skies of London, is just this again, isn't it? Yeah, this and this, we're looking at the same thing. Fireworks with dramatic accessories. Also, it should be mentioned as a side note, a lot of these bullets that didn't hit the V1 rocket, they had to come down, right? Somewhere, and they fell on London, and because they're tracer rounds, they're glowing red hot, they actually created a lot of the devastation, a lot of the fires. I'm sure at some point in your life you've seen the scenes from World War II where parts of East London are burning down and that. What people don't know is it was actually created by the anti-aircraft bullets landing. Yeah, it wasn't actually the V1 rocket or the buzz bomb or anything like that. It was our very own bullets landing back down and burning London to the ground. Once again, is this just pure idiocracy, stupidity, or is this perfectly planned by expert magicians who are masters of deception and gods of illusion? Yeah? Did they know full well that the anti-aircraft guns that were given were actually never going to shoot down the V1 rockets and were only going to help burn London to the ground or create scenes like this here? You get what I'm saying? I mean, if you've watched World War II documentaries, you've openly heard people say, we knew our anti-aircraft guns were never going to shoot down the Nazi planes or V1 rockets, but we did it for morale, to boost the morale of Londoners. It's like, well, that's very all well and good, but those tracer rounds were landing in East London and burning down London, creating the very thing that you're supposed to be stopping. Once again, as I always say, the purpose of the illusion is to manifest a real response. Yeah? That whole war, World War II, was being engineered by London. The City of London, I mean, the hidden hand that lives underneath the City of London that controls the world. They created that war, but because these soldiers and gunners and artillerymen and signallers and engineers or whatever who were manning these anti-aircraft guns, they did not know that they were being puppeteered by magicians on a stage. They are now being used to create the very thing they're supposed to be stopping. They're supposed to be stopping the bombing of London, but they're actually contributing to London being burnt down. So here's an iconic picture from World War II, the London Blitz. And here is an illustration from the book we are referencing, yeah? The book about magic, illusion, and scientific diversions. It's like we're practically looking at the same thing. The book that was written in 1897, yeah? It's almost as if this book here about magic almost came into life, manifested into reality, yeah? I mean, that's pretty impressive, isn't it? This is a well-known picture that you've probably seen many times throughout your life if you've ever looked into World War II. Incredible stuff, in my opinion. Just another side note, yeah? The earliest form of magic, and I'm going to do more videos on this later on in life, was us drawing stuff on the cave wall. Yeah, let's go along with the idea that we started off as cavemen. We started off very primitive, yeah? The first thing we ever did, way before, I believe, the wheel and the spear, maybe not the spear, but anyway, the first thing we did that was quite magical, and I'm talking about magic with a K, i.e. putting thoughts in the minds, is we drew pictures on a wall. Now, if you've ever seen cave art, a lot of people think that the cave art, the picture of a couple of cavemen like chasing down a buffalo, is what they drew, painted after it happened. No. They painted that first in the nighttime because that's what they wanted to manifest the next day. Yeah? And then what they would do, because you've got to remember, there's no books, there's no TV, there's no instruments, they would role play the big hunt. So maybe the father would dress up as the buffalo, and the kids would dress up as the hunters chasing him down. And that was their form of entertainment they did around the fire at night time when they were inside the cave, which is pretty much what Plato's cave is talking about, right? Yeah? So, as a form of good luck, as a form of like invoking, provoking, you know, what they wanted to happen tomorrow, they would draw it first, hyper focus on it, Then they would role play it out theatrically, yeah, with costumes and playing the role of the hunter and the buffalo running, and then it would happen the next day, right? This was the first ever form of magic, and it's still at play today, because that is exactly what illusion warfare is. Getting you to believe in something via the use of theatricality and deception so it manifests into reality. And I don't know, that thought just came into my head regarding looking at these illustrations, these pictures, and actual supposed world stage theatre. The drawing manifested into life. Yeah? This drawing manifested into life. Into our existence. In this plane of existence that we live on, yeah? I wonder how many people listen to me talking and just think, wow, this guy's fucking insane. He's fucking insane. He's lost it. He's a madman. Or do people think, yeah, he's a madman, but there's a little bit of genius to what he's saying? I don't know. Anyway, promise I'm going to wrap this video up now because I'm getting sick of the sound of my own voice, yeah? One last thing I wanted to bring up. When it comes to like these rocket launcher systems or artillery, mortar rounds, whatever, yeah? These artillerymen, the gunners, yeah? They have no idea what's inside the shell, yeah? The artillery shell or the rocket or the missile, right? They're just given it and they load it into the machine and that's that. It's not like they get to cut this open and inspect what's inside, yeah? It comes in a box, and on the box we printed a load of codes and digits as to referencing what's supposedly inside, yeah? Whether it's a smoke round, an illumination round, high explosive round, low explosive round, yeah? And then, of course, they double check it with what's actually printed on the side of the artillery shell or missile or rocket or whatever. And that's it. They don't get to, like I said, they don't get to slice this open and check that it is what it says it is, right? So the point I'm trying to make here is that they might think that they're firing a high explosive round into the enemy when really what they're firing is a more theatrical round, as I like to call it. A round that doesn't actually have high explosives, but instead has things that would make it low explosive, but make it a very loud bang. Like training ammunition, even. Thrown in with a little bit of magnesium. Yeah. A little bit of like aluminium powder. You know, things that are going to make it very big and bright and smoky. You got to remember, like an artillery round, depending on the size of the artillery, goes like up to 30 kilometers away. So the guys firing the actual artillery gun, they have no idea whether it's hit the target or not. They just get radioed in by the forward observer, the guy who's called in the artillery strike, and they get told whether it's a hit or miss or whether to fire more rounds, yeah? You get what I'm saying? It's only the people inside the factory that are going to know what's actually in the rounds themselves, yeah? So it wouldn't be that hard, like I'm saying, for the hidden hand to give a load of theatrical rounds to soldiers on the ground, and them soldiers and the gunners, artillerymen, thinking that it's an actual high explosive round meant to go and kill the enemy, when actually what they're doing is shooting fireworks off into the distance unknowingly, yeah? Unfortunately, soldiers, sailors, airmen, special forces guys, they are being deceived most of all, yeah? They are being used in the deception. I know, you know, unfortunately, I hate to say this, but the number one factor in you joining the military is that you follow orders, yeah? That's the whole point of the recruitment system. Yeah, them first 28 weeks, we need to know you're going to follow orders no matter what. We can't have you questioning every 5 minutes or disobeying orders, yeah? That's why every country in the world follows the British new model army system of having a recruitment process, yeah? It's not about having the greatest warrior that's going to go out and kill the enemy. It's about having someone that's very subordinate, that follows orders and doesn't ask questions, yeah? If an artilleryman started asking, hey, what's in this round? Can we angle grind it open and that? He would get thrown out of the artillery, Yeah? It's the little things like that that make the whole grand illusion happen. They don't ask questions. They just put the artillery shell in the artillery gun, in the field gun, and fire it off. Yeah? It lands 30 kilometers away, and that's that. For them, a very real experience. I think that's it for this video. I've spoken enough. Like I said, I'm sick of the sound of my own voice. We live in a twilight world. There are no friends at dusk.